Are you about to waste thousands on a camera that'll make you want to throw it out the window? Before you hit that buy button, you need to see this list. I'm about to show you the top 10 most useless cameras that will absolutely destroy your wallet and your photography dreams in 2025. And trust me, number 1 will blow your mind. If you're thinking about upgrading your camera gear this year, you could be walking straight into a trap. These cameras promise the world but deliver nothing but frustration and regret. From $6,000 disasters to so-called rugged cameras that break at the first sign of adventure, I've got the inside scoop on every camera you should avoid. And if you don't want to waste your hard-earned money on camera disasters like these, hit that subscribe button right now and smash the notification bell. I'm constantly exposing the latest camera leaks and breaking down which camera is worth your money and which will leave you crying. Trust me, after seeing this list, you'll want to stay updated on all my camera breakdowns. Starting off our list at number 10, we have the Nikon Z7 II, a 45.7 megapixel full-frame mirrorless camera with 4K at 60 frames per second video that'll set you back around $2,000. On paper, this looks like a photographer's dream. High resolution for detailed prints, 4K video for content creators, and that prestigious Nikon badge. You'd think this camera would be amazing with those specs. But here's the brutal reality check. This full-frame mirrorless camera, despite its high 45.7 megapixel resolution, has drawn intense criticism from users for being unreliable, with issues like poor ergonomics, frustrating handling, subpar high ISO performance leading to noisy images, and autofocus that falters in dynamic scenarios. In 2025, consumers describe it as the worst camera ever owned, rendering it useless for serious photography where reliability and ease of use are key. Picture this. You're at your kid's soccer game, trying to capture that perfect goal shot, but the autofocus decides to take a coffee break and hunt around like it's playing hide and seek. The moment the action gets intense, this camera just gives up. Add in poor ergonomics that make your hands cramp after just 30 minutes of shooting, high ISO performance that turns your indoor family photos into a grainy nightmare, and handling so frustrating you'll literally want to throw it in the trash. We're talking about basic photography functions failing consistently, missed focus on stationary subjects, menu systems that feel like they were designed by someone who's never held a camera, and build quality that feels cheap despite the premium price tag. For $2,000, you'd expect professional reliability, but this camera delivers anything but that. But wait, if you think number 10 is disappointing, number 9 will show you how even flagship cameras can be complete letdowns. At number 9, we have Canon's EOS R1, a 24-megapixel full-frame mirrorless beast with 6K at 60 frames per second video that demands a whopping $6,300 from your bank account. Canon marketed this as their flagship miracle worker, the camera that would revolutionize professional photography and put them back on top of the mirrorless game. The hype was absolutely insane. YouTubers were losing their minds, camera stores were taking pre-orders like crazy, and professionals were literally lining up to get their hands on this supposed game changer. But here's the brutal truth that Canon doesn't want you to know. Professionals are calling it the most disappointing camera launch of 2025. Here's what really happened. Hyped as a flagship mirrorless camera, it only offers marginal upgrades over predecessors like the EOS R3, with timid autofocus improvements and conservative video capabilities that fail to justify its high price. In 2025, it's disappointing and useless for professionals expecting cutting-edge performance. Imagine spending over $6,000 expecting cutting-edge performance, only to realize you could have bought the previous model and saved yourself $3,000 for practically the same experience. Unlike our number 10 pick, which at least tried to deliver on specs, this one just phones it in completely. Hold on to your wallets, because number 8 proves that sometimes bigger zoom means bigger disappointment. Number 8 brings us the Panasonic Lumix FZ 80D and 18-megapixel bridge camera with a massive 60x zoom range covering 20 to 1200 mm, all for around $400. On the surface, this sounds like the ultimate wildlife photographer's bargain. Imagine being able to capture everything from wide landscape shots to extreme telephoto wildlife photos with just one camera. Panasonic really knows how to market this thing, promising SLR-like performance in a compact body. Sounds like a wildlife photographer's dream, right? Dead wrong. This camera promises to bring those distant subjects crystal clear and close, but what it actually delivers is a complete nightmare of poor image quality the moment lighting conditions aren't absolutely perfect. That impressive 60x zoom becomes completely useless when your photos look like they were taken through a dirty, scratched window. The image stabilization can't keep up with the extreme zoom range, so unless you're using a tripod for every single shot, you're getting blurry, unusable images. And if you're thinking about shooting 4K video to capture wildlife in motion, prepare yourself for rolling shutter so severe that simple panning shots look like a funhouse mirror. Completely distorted and nauseating to watch. Picture trying to photograph that rare bird you've been tracking for hours, only to discover the lens is so dim at the telephoto end. We're talking f5.9 that your shots are dark and blurry. For wildlife and sports photography, this camera is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. If you thought compromising on image quality was bad, wait until you see how number 7 completely fails at its one job. At number 7, we have the OM System Tough TG7, a 12-megapixel waterproof compact with 4K at 30 frames per second video, priced at around $550. This camera positions itself as the ultimate adventure companion, but the only adventure you'll have is trying to get decent photos out of it. The 12-megapixel sensor is so outdated, it makes smartphones from 5 years ago look cutting edge. Your mountain hiking photos will come out soft and noisy, completely ruining those once-in-a-lifetime moments. And forget about smooth video. There's no 4K at 60 frames per second, and the overall performance is so sluggish, you'll miss every action shot. Here's the real kicker. For $550, you could buy an action camera that actually works, or just use your smartphone, which probably has better image quality anyway. Community reviews are absolutely roasting this camera for being useless when quality actually matters. Like when you're documenting that epic outdoor adventure. Unlike number 8, which at least had impressive zoom on paper, this one can't even deliver on its basic promise of ruggedness. But number 6 will show you how a company can take zero innovation and somehow make it worse. Number 6 is the Fujifilm X-S20, a 26-megapixel APS-C mirrorless camera with 6K at 30 frames per second video capabilities, retailing for about $1,300. In 2025, this camera feels like a time machine that transported us back to 2020, and not in a good way. This camera offers absolutely zero innovation over older Fujifilm models. That 26-megapixel sensor? Dated. Weather sealing? Non-existent. Autofocus speed? Slower than your grandma learning TikTok. Even basic features like animal detection are buried so deep in menus, you'll need an archaeology degree to find them. Imagine spending $1,300 on what you think is fresh 2025 technology, only to realize you could have bought a used camera from 3 years ago for half the price and gotten the same experience. For photography enthusiasts looking for innovation, this camera is as exciting as watching paint dry on a rainy day. While number 7 at least tried to be rugged, this one doesn't even try to justify its existence. But wait until you see number 5. It proves that slapping a luxury logo on mediocrity doesn't make it premium. At number 5, we have the Leica V-Lux 5, a 20-megapixel bridge camera with a 1-inch sensor and 4K at 30 frames per second video, demanding $1,600 for the privilege of owning that famous red dot. But here's the thing about luxury branding. It doesn't magically make bad cameras good. This super zoom promises premium performance, but delivers mediocre image quality that would embarrass cameras half its price. The low light performance is so poor, indoor family photos look like they were shot in a cave. And that 1-inch sensor? It produces results that make you question why you didn't just buy a Sony RX10 IV instead. Customer feedback is absolutely savage, calling this camera useless as a luxury item when cheaper alternatives consistently outperform it. Picture paying premium prices for what is essentially a rebadged mediocre camera with a Leica sticker slapped on top. It's like buying a Honda Civic with a Ferrari badge and expecting Formula 1 performance. Unlike our previous picks, which at least offered some modern features, this one proves that brand prestige means nothing when the fundamentals fail. But number 4 takes us into truly bizarre territory with promises it simply cannot keep. Number 4 brings us back in time with the Nikon AW1, a 14-megapixel waterproof mirrorless camera with 1080p at 60 frames per second video, still floating around the used market for about $800. In 2025, buying this camera is like choosing a horse and buggy for your daily commute. This camera was marketed as waterproof, but it's about as sealed as a screen door. The moment you push the ISO above 1600, your photos turn into a grainy mess that looks like static TV. And those highlights, this camera handles them about as well as a vampire handles sunlight. Everything just gets blown out and unusable. Imagine thinking you're getting a rugged adventure camera for underwater shots, only to discover it's less waterproof than your average smartphone. In 2025, when action cameras can shoot 4K underwater without breaking a sweat, this obsolete relic is completely useless for any serious adventure photography. While number 5 at least had modern video capabilities, this one feels like archaeological equipment. But number 3 will show you how rushing a camera to market can create an absolute disaster. At number 3, we have the Panasonic Lumix S9, a 24-megapixel full-frame mirrorless camera with a fixed 26mm f8 lens, priced at $1,500. This camera feels like someone started building a great camera, then got bored halfway through and said, "Good enough." That fixed 26mm f8 lens is so limiting and dim, it's like trying to paint a masterpiece with a broken crayon. No viewfinder means you're squinting at the back screen like you're trying to read fine print in the dark. The autofocus is subpar, the battery life is underwhelming, and the whole thing feels rushed to market. Picture this. You're a creative photographer excited about full-frame possibilities, but you're stuck with one focal length and an aperture so narrow that your creative vision gets suffocated. Reviews are absolutely slamming this camera as a half-baked concept that shouldn't have left the drawing board. Unlike number 4, which was just outdated, this one represents everything wrong with rushing products to market without proper development. But number 2 proves that sometimes clinging to the past can be even worse than rushing to the future. Number 2 is the Pentax K3 Mark III, a 25-megapixel APS-C DSLR with 4K at 30 frames per second video, stubbornly priced at $2,000. In 2025, buying this camera is like insisting on using a flip phone in the smartphone era. This DSLR holdout has autofocus so sluggish you could literally watch grass grow faster. That optical viewfinder provides zero modern feedback, making you feel like you're using camera technology from the Stone Age. And at $2,000, you could buy a mirrorless camera that runs circles around this relic. The only people who should consider this camera are those feeling intensely nostalgic for dying DSLR technology. But even then, you'd be better off buying a vintage film camera for the authentic experience. In a mirrorless-dominated 2025, this camera is about as relevant as a cassette tape at a Spotify party. While number 3 disappointed with poor execution, this one disappoints by refusing to evolve with the times. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared you for the absolute catastrophe waiting at number 1. And the most useless camera of 2025 is the Zeiss ZX1, a 37-megapixel full-frame mirrorless camera with a fixed 35mm f2 lens that will absolutely devastate your wallet at $6,000. Yes, you heard that right. $6,000 for what might be the most frustrating camera experience money can buy. This isn't just expensive, this is luxury car expensive, vacation to Europe expensive, pay off your student loans expensive. Here's the absolutely mind-blowing part that makes this even more infuriating. This camera actually produces exceptional image quality when it decides to work properly. The files are gorgeous, the color science is beautiful, and the build quality feels premium in your hands. But that's literally where every single good thing about this camera ends, and the absolute nightmare begins. The autofocus is so unreliable and unpredictable, you'll miss more shots than a blindfolded basketball player at the free throw line. We're talking about missing focus on stationary subjects in broad daylight. Basic photography stuff that even budget cameras nail consistently. The performance is slower than dial-up internet from the 1990s, taking forever to process images, boot up, or respond to any input. And don't even get me started on the interface. It's so confusing and counterintuitive. You'll need a PhD in engineering and a manual thicker than a phone book just to change basic settings like ISO or shooting mode. Every single operation that should take seconds stretches into minutes of frustrating menu diving and button mashing. Imagine dropping $6,000, more than most people's cars are worth, expecting a premium photography experience, only to discover you've bought the most expensive paperweight in camera history. This is a luxury gimmick that's completely useless for efficient, frustration-free shooting. You could literally buy 3 or 4 excellent cameras for the same price and have money left over for a vacation to actually use them. While every other camera on this list had obvious flaws from the start, this one tricks you with promises of quality before revealing its true nature as the ultimate photography troll. And there you have it, the top 10 most useless cameras of 2025, crowned by the $6,000 disaster that is the Zeiss ZX1. Which of these cameras have you unfortunately experienced firsthand? Drop your worst camera pick in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your horror stories. If this video saved you from making a costly camera mistake, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more camera leaks, breakdowns, and reviews that actually tell you the truth. And speaking of truth, check out our latest video on the top 10 worst camera of 2025. Because apparently, useless camera gear isn't limited to just the cameras themselves. Remember, just because a camera is expensive doesn't mean it's good, and just because it has impressive specs on paper doesn't mean it works in real life. Until next time, keep shooting, but maybe not with any of these cameras.